I've never been the most social individual, especially when it comes to work. While most people would be happy to gab away around the office water cooler all day, I prefer to quietly work on my own. So, when the opportunity to work as a hotel night auditor came my way, it seemed like a perfect solution for my employment needs. The description was fairly straightforward. Balance the books and monitor the hotel front desk, admitting guests as they arrive, all between the hours of 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. the following day. There was one catch, though. During my shift, I would be the only employee present in the hotel. So, besides the guests, I would be completely alone. Now, a lot of people might find the idea of working alone in a large hotel for the duration of the entire night somewhat unsettling, but for me it was fantastic, and exactly what I was looking for. I started the job and immediately loved it. My duties were simple, and because of the late hour of my shift, I very rarely saw guests who were already checked into the hotel and barely ever actually checked in guests myself. It was bliss. Next to the front desk, I had a small office where I could do my work and watch activity happening in the hotel through two closed-circuit monitors. The monitors were connected to two cameras on either of the two floors of the hotel and gave me a view of the hallways that gave access to guest rooms. Their resolution was poor and fairly gritty due to the technology being so out of date, but nothing ever happened in the hotel, so it was really never much of a concern. One night, however, as I was going about my regular duties, the monitors started to break up into a hazy white noise. I knew enough about the technology to know that it couldn't be any kind of interference. The cameras were hardwired to the monitors, so there was really no way that the signal could be interrupted, save for a power outage. But no lights were flickering, so that couldn't be the case. I decided to investigate. I went to each floor and checked its respective camera. Wire was still connected and red light was still flashing, so in my professional opinion, everything seemed to be working properly. I was about to turn towards the second floor stairs to make my way back to the lobby when I heard a small, almost whispering voice coming from an indistinguishable location. Do you see? A small part of me, the illogical, childish part, became somewhat unnerved by this, but I quickly shrugged off the incident as one of the guest children attempting to play a prank on me. After a brief check yet again of the main floor camera, also in seemingly working order, I returned to my desk in the lobby office and decided to spend the rest of my shift watching a movie on Netflix on the office computer. About a half hour went by without incident. Then the monitors started to act up again. With a groan of frustration, I went to pick up the phone and began dialing our security provider to see if they could send a tech out to help. Before I could finish dialing the number, something on the monitor caught my eye. It was a shape. It was on the second floor monitor. It was black and vaguely humanoid, but something about it seemed so wrong. It stood almost hunched over with its appendages splayed out and articulated into bizarre and unnatural angles. I squinted at the image coming from the glowing monitor screen and moved so close to it that my nose was nearly touching it in an effort to try and discern any identifiable features. But the shape was far down the second floor hallway, away from the camera, and identification proved useless. I stared at the image on that screen for what felt like hours, and the shape didn't even flinch. Warily, and with an understandable feeling of dread in my stomach, I decided to go to the second floor and see what this shape in fact was. Armed with my trusty mag light, which although was just a flashlight could put serious foot to ass if swung with enough force, I made my way back up to the side hallway stair to the second floor. I peered into the hallway and immediately felt my stomach drop. What was I doing? This was probably just some guest who was drunk and forgot which room he or she was staying in. But then why did I feel this sense of panic? like something terrible was about to happen. Fight or flight in its purest form. I looked down to the far end of the hallway where the camera was aimed, and I saw nothing. There was nothing there. I turned my head to the opposite end of the hallway to see the camera's red light still blinking. Well, maybe Drunky McGee found his room finally. Good for Drunky McGee. I gave my head a shake and began to make my return trip to the lobby. On my way, I decided to stop and go outside for a quick smoke break. One of the benefits to working by yourself is you're essentially your own boss. If I want to smoke cigarettes every 30 minutes, well, smoke them if you got them. It wasn't long after that first blessed drag, however, that I heard the voice from earlier again. Louder this time.
Do you see?
My cigarette dropped from my mouth, and in a panic I started to frantically check around nearby corners and doorways. Still nothing. What the fuck was going on here? I was only about halfway through my shift, and I was not in the mood for another 4 hours of this nonsense, but my only other recourse was to start knocking on doors to guest rooms, an act that would surely get me fired. So, I took a deep breath, opened the front door to the lobby, and made my way back to my desk. It was nothing, I thought. The night's playing tricks on you, that's all. As I made my way to my desk, however, and glanced once again at the chromatic screen of the closed-circuit monitor, I knew nothing could be farther from the truth. There, on the first floor monitor, appeared the shape yet again. Closer this time, so that I could make out more of its features. It still stood there with its awkward gait, arms and legs in strange positions, but now I could see its head and face. I say it because it did not seem to have any discernible gender. Its head was tilted back and upward, facing directly at the camera, and it had a smile on its face. A smile in shape only, though, because there was no happiness in that malevolent grin, only sinister intent which made me shudder to my deepest core. I ran to the main floor access, threw the door open, and looked down the hallway to find nothing yet again. I felt my head start spinning like I was losing control. My job be damned, I screamed. Is someone fucking with me? It had better stop now or I'm calling the goddamn cops. I ran back to the monitor, fully expecting to see the shape running down the hallway. Damn guess kids. But the sight that greeted me after I returned to my station filled me with a deep horror that was so great, I let out an audible yelp and immediately covered my mouth as though I was about to vomit. Both monitors showed the shape, but it was no longer at a distance. Its face filled the camera, so all I could see in the monitors was its visage in gross detail. Its eyes, sunk deep in their sockets, flickered with a menacing white light where its eyes should have been. That terrible grin was stretched across its face to inhuman proportions, so there were more teeth than face. It seemed to be staring right at me, because in all honesty, it was. And from inside my skull and all around me, at an ear-splitting level of volume, I heard it cry out,
Do you see?
I dropped beneath my desk and tears started to stream from my face. I was filled with a raw, primal fear that nearly incapacitated me. Carefully and with great pain, I reached up to the desk and grabbed the phone from where it sat. I fumbled with the buttons on the pad, desperately trying to punch in 911. I put the phone to my cheek and could hear myself breathing heavily through the earpiece as the tone indicating dialing made a single click, and a voice on the other line said,
911, what's your emergency?
But before I could utter a single syllable, I heard a large crash and a guttural scream coming from the main floor. I dropped the phone and cautiously got to my feet. Curiosity was too great, and I needed to find out what was going on. I glanced at the monitor to see one of the guest doors open on the main floor, and a bright flash sparked from the empty doorway. A woman flung herself from the doorway, visibly terrified as something dragged her back into the darkness. I watched with horrified fascination as the shape emerged from the room, gave the camera a quick glance, and then walked to the next room, and to the next, and the next. As terrified as I was, some part of me needed to keep watching. I realized suddenly that the poor woman on the screen did not emerge again. She needed help. I grabbed my mag light and ventured into the hallway, cautiously, as I did not want to draw the attention of that horrible shape. I went to the open door of the guest room and peered inside. What I saw will haunt me until the day I die. There lay the woman, covered in splattered and congealed blood and viscera. Her dead eyes were wide and panicked. Laying next to her, two mutilated boys, their mouths frozen in a silent and terrible scream. I stumbled over my own feet as I frantically exited the room. I saw a brief flash of red and blue lights before finally, thankfully, I passed out. When I awoke, I remember vague images of men screaming, and finally I was in a dimly lit room. I was sitting on a chair, my hands restrained in front of me on a table. Handcuffs. As I tried to make sense of my surroundings, the only door to the room opened, and two large men walked in. One pushing a small television on a cart with wheels to rest a few feet in front of me. They looked at me with disgust and resentment, but said nothing. Until finally, one of the men pulled a DVD from a manila envelope marked with tape that said, "Evidence," in bright red letters. Still, without saying anything, he placed the DVD in the player located beneath the television, pushed a button, and the television sparked to life. The images I saw made absolutely no sense. On the screen, I saw the hotel's main floor hallway. I was watching footage from the closed-circuit cameras. It was time-stamped to that terrible night, but there was no grinning shape anywhere to be seen. Only me, carrying a shotgun, traveling from room to room, entering each with a bright flash, and then shortly thereafter traveling to the next. One of what I now assumed to be police officers told me how I had fatally shot men, women, and children. 22 people dead in all. I had trouble hearing him, though, as I watched intently at the images, trying to understand how any of this could be possible. I sobbed uncontrollably. I couldn't tell if I was laughing or crying after a while. My mind felt like it was breaking in two as the other officer screamed at me. "Do you see what you did, you motherfucker? Do you see?"